We'll start with an introduction. I gotta see this broadcasting this.
Looks like there's still extra pizza up here.
There you go, first announcement. The slides are online.
Yep.
I'm sure it might be visible. I'm getting a little better with this at every single time we record this, so it's being more seamless. Yeah, so the slides are online on that meetup group I commented, and then there's a YouTube stream too if you want to. Typically for this group, we usually think 5, maybe 6 total views ever. We do it for historical purposes. Okay. My name is Casey Driscoll. Welcome to WordPress Charlottesville. We are a group of WordPress users and developers and designers, enthusiasts generally speaking. We meet once a month. We're a floating organization. So this is our current home, and I think we'll be for some time. But we've been moving around to some different agencies in town. So tonight I will be speaking about responsive design. Joe is typically the guy that runs this first one, but he couldn't make it tonight. So what I'd like to do first is do some introductions, if you wouldn't mind, if we go around the room and just really casually say who you are and sort of your connection to the field, whether you're a user or that means like you write content or blog or whatever else. You're a small business owner or designer, developer, et cetera, et cetera. I think you've done this sort of thing before. And then let's also do the next, like the itch you need to scratch, the next topic, the next X you have to grind, something that's bothering you right now. So you're trying to fish for new talks for the coming months. So your name, how you're connected to WordPress, and the next thing that you'd like to figure out. So my name is Casey. I run my own design development firm called Patchworks. There's not even really a website yet because I just did this like over the weekend. I've been doing WordPress development for a few years now. I travel frequently to DC and stuff. Try to get actually. And my next grind would probably be like Google Analytics, like the hardcore, like sit me down for 8 hours and just feed it into my brain Google Analytics because I need to know the next step. So,
my name is Stephanie, and I am currently managing, updating WordPress websites for 2 organizations. One is a volunteer and the other is an employee. I know enough to do all those things, but I don't really know as much as I want to know, so I really don't know what my next axe to grind would be.
Okay. That's good to know. There's a place for that.
Yes.
I'm Marguerite Brunner. I'm a doctoral student in the Curry School at UVA, and I have an interest in developing a website for teachers to get some of the important research information, but sort of condensed down in a very, user-friendly way. And so I'm new to all of this, so I guess my little axe is I want to learn everything.
Okay.
I don't even know where to begin.
There might be a good presentation in the works of like, welcome to WordPress. This is
Great.
Everything you should need to know.
Or even if anyone has a book to recommend. Or, I did go to Code Academy, and I've gotten started with the HTML and the CSS.
Yeah. That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Girls Development.
And I'm joining that,
Awesome.
and I'm
Okay.
going on Thursday. So see you there.
What was that? The
Yeah.
Girls Development? Is that what
Girls Develop It. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Is that Thursday?
Thursday at noon, there's like an online thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And then next Tuesday is the CSS class.
Yeah, I need to look into
For those not familiar, Ann Lewis is a hardcore web developer living out of Stanton now, and she's piloting this Girl Develop It thing, which is a national-wide organization, but she's trying really hard to set it up in Central Virginia. So if you know anybody who's vaguely interested at all, she'd be very welcome to hear new topics and people who are trying to get into the field or just not sure where to start. And she runs, I think, like 5 or 6 classes a month now. And it's all published online through Meetup, I think is the best place to start. And you can talk to me or someone else.
May and June is CSS, HTML, and JavaScript.
Right, yeah, so a lot of entry-level web development stuff, and then she offers a number of different courses too, depending on the need. Okay, go ahead.
My name's Mike. I've been doing off and on either web management or web development for about 18 years. But since the last, I guess, 8 to 10 years, I've done more web management and not development.
Sure. Through like the university or?
No, I created the website, thesaver.com, that covers Virginia athletics.
Okay.
And ran that for the last 16 years. And I'm familiar with responsive web design because we self-developed that for our website. And I'm familiar with WordPress in terms of actually using WordPress and developing blogs in WordPress, but haven't gone as far as actual development with responsive design.
Okay. Well, if you had an axe to grind, if you had a next step, what do you think that would be? Something that's bothering you right now.
I'm probably getting into JavaScript and catching up
Okay.
on the newest HTML and CSS.
Okay.
My name is Tim McDaniels. I'm with Convoy. I'm a partner of Convoy. I've been using WordPress since 2006. And in terms of an axe to grind, I don't know. I mean, I was working on a recent project integrating the Google Publisher plugin, and just basically got to a point where I can't actually create a development site using Google Publisher because you need content first for them to approve. It's kind of this kind of circular type thing. Like, in order for them to approve me using Google AdSense, I had to have content. It's just a weird kind of thing. But
Maybe like third-party services, something like that. That's
Yeah,
what I thought.
yeah.
Okay.
it's just kind of basically, in order to integrate Google AdSense, which he knows a lot more than I do, you have to have content, and it needs to know what the content is so it can serve the correct content. But in a dev, website situation,
Chicken and eggs.
yeah.
Okay, cool.
Hi, I'm Nick Skriloff. I work at the University of Virginia, and I manage 5 different WordPress instances with Nutella. And one of the things that I really like to learn is actually 2 parts. So one, I'm interested in wearables, but that's non-WordPress. But in terms of WordPress, I like the WordPress command line interface. I know it's a tool out there that is makes things faster. I haven't used it a lot, and so I'd be interested in that.
I didn't talk on that.
And just so that these fellows don't feel intimidated, we have started a small little coding club in our neighborhood. And so thank you for letting us come out. So I've invited these fellows out just to kind of learn what professional developers do and the type of community they create. And so I'll let them introduce themselves. I don't want to feel like, right, on the spot.
If it's your first time tonight, can you raise your hand real quick? See, there you go. So you're half the room. So don't be intimidated.
All right, well, I'm Tim McKay. As Nick said, I'm with Nick. So
Cool.
I do actually, I used to do this, I haven't used WordPress, but I do software reverse engineering now for the Department of Defense, but I used to do some application development. So I'd be interested just to kind of see where things are since probably 6 or 7 years ago when I used to work in this.
It's changed a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm
For the better.
quite a bit
For the
behind.
better.
But this is my son, Danny.
Yeah, I'm Danny, and I really like working with HTML and just styling custom web pages with like CSS. I find that really fun, and I'm here because I just want to learn as much as I can.
Alright, my name is Aiden, and I've been just really interested in how technology works today. This is really interesting, so I just wanted to learn like software developing and stuff like that.
Excellent. You're in a good place.
Hi, my name is Mark. My day job is a quality engineer for a medical device company. But my wife and I started a business about a year ago and decided to try to get it online. We have a WordPress site set up to get people going there. And I guess my axe to grind is how do we get our users to go to this website?
Yep.
And and also monetizing it from sort of a membership standpoint.
Okay.
What are you selling?
We're you want the elevator pitch?
Yeah, do that 30-second pitch real quick. I'm interested.
Yeah, we're just Craigslist for in-home help.
Okay. Cool. All right. I'm Mark Edwards. I own a company with my wife called OptiPop, and we do design, video, and web stuff. And my itch, it's not an axe, but my itch is big databases. So I'm really curious about how do and solar and those guys. So that's, I don't know. I go to the Neon Guild meetings and no one seems to address that yet. And I know that there's probably some real experts in town that do that stuff. So y'all know something like
There's a DevOps meetup and a new web developer meetup. If you just search Charlottesville meetups, both should come up, and there's definitely experts that should be able to help with that.
Yeah,
I don't know about Hadoop.
Open source
specifically.
connection. Open source connections
Okay.
in town. He, one of the guys wrote a book on solar.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, Eric. Yeah, Eric Hatcher, and who is it at open source? It's
Eric is who I was.
Eric. Yeah. That's Eric Hatcher.
Does anybody here use databases other than MySQL?
SQL Server, Postgres.
Yeah, Postgres touch, but I'm assuming this group would be not in line with what you're looking for. Exactly.
Yeah, but I mean,
right, absolutely.
With WordPress, I guess.
And just back to your question about membership groups.
Yeah.
There's a really cool site called Your Website Engineer, and it's one of the guys that works for WordPress.
Okay.
And he started his own podcast, and he's got a really nice explanation on how to create membership sites.
Cool.
So yourwebsite engineer.com.
Always a good education. Way back.
Hi, my name's Ryan. I'm a graduate student at UVA in the physics department. I use web technology for data acquisition in the lab. And up until now, I've written everything from scratch. And I think it's getting big enough now where I need to move to a system. Something has already been pre-made, a platform that I don't have to build from the ground up. So I've never used WordPress before.
Cool.
I'm going to look around.
Awesome.
So, Casey, may I make a suggestion?
Yes, sir.
If you open up your PDF in Firefox, it goes straight into an actual presentation.
Oh,
Like,
snap.
so you don't have to scroll through.
The thing is, it might take like 5 minutes to open because the desktop environment is ugly here, but while we're finishing up, we'll keep on.
I'm John Rice. I do website design and development. Working with WordPress fairly heavily for 3+ years. I guess the amount of decline, actually, I mean, there was something really sort of mundane. Getting clients to feel comfortable using your websites.
Okay.
I'm really surprised at how uncomfortable people
I wouldn't call that mundane as much as like the holy grail.
are. I mean, it's
It should be easy, right? Like, but in my experience and what I've heard a lot of complaints of, it's like it's this it's like it's a cliff. It just cannot be surpassed. But we can definitely talk about it and like have a whole class on
I
it.
actually have one client. It's a large organization, and she said she hated the website. Why can't we have a WordPress website? Because WordPress is so much easier. This is so confusing.
Oh god. Send her here, I guess. we'll do what we can.
I'm Daria Brzezinski. By day, I'm a psychologist, and I teach PVCC business courses. I've owned 7 businesses in my life. How to drive traffic to your Facebook, LinkedIn, and websites, and how to start your own business. I'm studying to be a software engineer. It's in cybersecurity. I have designed and operate 5 WordPress websites, including uploading radio, my radio and television shows. That's how it all started. My thing that I would love to have addressed is plugins that crash websites and things.
Yeah.
Cybersecurity.
Okay. We actually just did a security talk like 2 months ago. I think you missed. Yeah. It was recorded not well for anybody that was actually there. Okay. And we could certainly do another one. It's in the meetup, actually, I think. Yeah, like if you look 2 months back. And what you're looking for might be more closely related to like best practices too, which we haven't really touched on yet. More like updating, having a second server, that sort of thing for the just in case situations. But yeah.
And also, like cybersecurity, there are specific people who work with cybersecurity in terms of WordPress sites.
Right.
So, I know a couple of them, but I've used them
He really covered this well in the talk.
Okay.
So
Great.
it's all there. And for anybody else that listens to, there's a cyber talk or a security talk that's like, a lot of this stuff is documented online in the meetup group if you go to meetups back.
I'm Shane. I'm a newbie, started WordPress and web design stuff. I'm trying to transition out with my skill into IT realm. I'm really interested in SEO and search marketing. It's kind of thing that I'm trying to learn what WordPress and stuff like that to have an extra thing that people out on YouTube. And in the process, I'm slowly rebuilding my wife's business website that her dad built in 2006. It's pretty nasty. That's kind of my project site. So
Okay. Have you updated it since then? The WordPress, at least? Or
he didn't do WordPress.
Okay.
Like HTML, Java, PHP.
Right. Thinger. Yeah. Okay.
So my ads that PHP is going to pick WordPress and get the stuff that you build.
Okay. There's these things called Okay. Well, we might be able to do that. I could definitely teach something like that. Also, too, if anybody else wanted to teach something, it doesn't have to all go to me. Like, I'd be happy to give some of it up. I love speaking and chomping at the bit to help make the community grow, so I'm always willing to speak, but we're definitely interested. I think Joe particularly is definitely interested in finding other people to help. I go to DC often, and they have this rotating schedule thing where it's like a presenter night once. Okay, so it's like a rotation. So they have 1 month it's presenter night where it's like a presentation like this. Another month it's like a round table sort of thing, but like there's different stations and you go around to different experts asking. They have like 150 people, so that's plausible. But we could do something here where it's like self-help or like people talk about their issues and maybe I can't read your lips, but.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a couple of those in Charlottesville.
Oh, are there? Okay.
On Meetup.
Oh, well, maybe we can skip that. But then there's also lightning rounds where we can have like 5 or 6 presenters just come up and talk about what they're currently doing or something that they find interesting or whatever else. Just ideas. We're very much looking, like June isn't scheduled right now. So we're looking for the next thing and looking for your interaction if you want to give some feedback. Let's do some quick announcements. Let's implement this, looking for work and have work that needs a worker. So Nick, you want to start us off for have work but need a worker?
Can you pull up the web real quick?
Sure, yeah.
Somewhat brief, but so I attend Blue Ridge Community Church, and like you were saying back there, we have a website that's non-user friendly on the administrative back end. So we want to WordPressify our website. So go to BRC, the second one right here, BRCC community, that one. And so we're looking, now I could do this, but I just do not have the time to do this for our church. And so basically what we're looking for is to replace the existing functionality plus a calendar. And so if you just kind of come over here, hopefully the link will load. Isn't that great? Joe, we need help. So go ahead. Hopefully, some of the JavaScript stuff will come up. So we have a number of static pages that you just click on them, they go to them. And you want to replace those? It's pretty easy. And I think our calendar is it doesn't change because it's so hard to change in the back. And so mainly we want to WordPressify this site. And we also have our podcast. But we don't have to manage all the podcasts through this, but it would be nice to add that in because basically our pastor will do his sermon and they'll upload it and it'll become part of the feeds and they'll get it. But we're mainly looking to WordPressify this, and so if you have an interest, just please come see me afterwards.
Cool. Thank you. Anybody else hiring? Anybody else looking for work as a freelancer or in any capacity? We kind of introduced ourselves already. It didn't sound like there's much people like that. Okay, the last announcement, well, one quick announcement is Philadelphia is hosting a Word Camp coming up in June the 13th and the 14th. I just got back from one in Minneapolis,
and they're really, really awesome. If you're getting serious about this, it's basically a weekend meetup, and there's lots of topics from sometimes the best internationally known developers and designers and stuff fly in and give really great content talks and plugin talks and theme talks. So it's well worth going. And we're actually trying to host one ourselves in October, and I can safely say we have some positive momentum. I'm actually quite optimistic about this, I guess, or whatever. A few weeks ago, I was looking for 5 or 6 co-organizers to help me do some of the legwork, and I needed sort of faces and names and titles for the WordPress Foundation, so they would know that this was a legitimate operation. And now I think we officially have 3 of them signed on. Of the 5, I'll be the main chair. Tim from Convoy will be the spaces coordinator for figuring out the venue and some of the operations as far as like the hotel arrangements, things like that goes. Daria has just agreed to be our attendees co-chair. So she'll be handling food requirements and code of conduct and a number of other things, making sure she's the hostess, making sure everyone has a good time. And then Ray Nedsel from UVA will be the presentations person. So he'll be handling call for presentations, handling AV the day of, that sort of thing. This will be late October. It's not official yet. This could sync next week. I'm hoping by the June meetup we can officially publicize this and say we have a date and a venue and it's all lined up, ready to go. We're looking for, it will be $20 for the whole day, basically, on what would be a Saturday in late October, and you'd come and you'd listen to 8 people speak or so. We have to work out a lot of details, but that's generally about what it is. We're shooting for city space on the mall, and that holds about 100 people. We're not looking for something really extravagant this first year. We just want to execute something that's really straightforward. Yeah. I know, right, yep. So we'd like to, but we'll have to figure this all out. So just kind of a heads up, if you know anybody that would be interested, or you're interested yourself, something to think about. Okay, any other announcements? Because now we can actually do the presentation. Good, okay, all right, hi, I'm Casey. I do web development stuff. This is about responsive design. Who has some idea what responsive design is? Who has no idea what responsive design is? Go ahead, raise your hand. Good, okay. All right, so I'll do a brief introduction. My name is Casey, blah, blah, that's me. All right, we'll go through, shooting for 30 minutes. Timey, 7:05, here we go. Web usage, history and the future as far as devices and browsers are concerned. Then we'll go through what is responsive design, some of the ideas that surround it. Then we'll go through what was called Mobilegeddon, which is a Google problem that happened at the end of April. Then we'll talk about some helpful responsive tools for designing and building responsive sites and testing them. Then we'll talk about a coding idea called media queries, which is the heart of responsive design. And then we'll talk about picking and selecting building responsive themes and everything that goes into that. So far, so good. This is very casual, by the way. If you have any questions or comments, just don't throw me off the 7:05 mark and we'll be good to go. The meat of this talk was going to be 10 minutes talking about the past, present, and future of web usage, but I couldn't find an authority on like actual mobile statistics. So I was burning way too much time into this, so finally I just made this nice little graphic. If you've been in the industry for a while, just kind of ignore me as I wave my hands here because this isn't going to be like completely technically true. But for the novices and for the people just getting started, you just have to kind of, to get into responsive design, you have to kind of know where we've been and why it exists today. Responsive design is a word that was coined around 2010 or so, and it basically means the site content and the design responds to the device that it's being shown on. So it doesn't look the same for if you're on a laptop or a desktop. It responds to the device size. And the reason that is because there was some prehistory here that maybe matters or not. 2000, desktops dominated the usership space. Screen sizes were about 800 by 600 pixels or 1024 by 768. You're smiling. Is that about right? Is that good?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I made an ass of myself at one of the other meetups because I said I was way off in the pixel sizes. So I just hoping I was close enough. This was a personal guesstimation. I think 2004 is when laptops really started making the crest and they started taking over desktop usage. And of course, laptops were getting smaller and smaller and also larger and larger. So you see this differentiation in screen size. 2007, Apple announces the iPhone, which completely sets into motion this weird idea of what it means to be viewing a web page, when and where. These are some ideas that we'll be talking about. And then in 2010, they also kickstarted the, not technically kickstarted, but kickstarted the tablet phenomenon too, that quickly burned out 2 years later. So what this, I had some notes. Let's go here. Okay, yeah, let's just jump forward. So what this brings to light is when I went through school, I graduated in 2005, an undergraduate web development degree. And the sort of way people thought about design at the time, because all of this was very new, was it was a physical, see, I should have practiced a bit more. I'm looking for a piece of paper. It was a physical mindset. You had, when you design something on a piece of paper or a poster or something, you have a sit dimension thing. Yeah, Daria is holding up a great example. So you have a fixed width and fixed sets that you can design a pixel perfect design that will never change, and you publish it and then it goes out into the wild and you hang them up or you distribute them or whatever. And those people, those designers, were starting to design stuff for the web, which is really new at that time. The web started in like 94, 95 or so, and it was only 10 years old in 2005-ish. So this is still kind of a new industry, and it still is. The problem is when you were designing for desktops and mobile laptops, you sort of had a fixed screen size. People even recommended their screen size for 1200 pixels across or 1368 pixels across or something to that extent. But when the phones came out, you could no longer do that. You had to drop your idea. This is like basically every available resolution. If a device has been made with this resolution, or this is a standardized resolution with VGA, you might have heard of, and then every standard of that. So there's QVGA and SVGA and XVGA, and then there's like HD, which is your standard 1020 or 1920 by 1080, and all these other divisions of that. And companies make phones and screens in these sizes all the time. And what it really gets to is you can't use the piece of paper as your model for design anymore. You can't look at a screen, a big screen particularly, as you're designing or thinking about a website and say, this is how it's going to look because this is how people are going to view it. So the idea of responsive design ultimately comes down to future proofing. You have to acknowledge 3 things that we don't know. We have to acknowledge that we don't know what the device the user will be using when they're using it, or what device the user will be using, particularly for size dimensions. Okay, yes, I'm running ahead of myself. Got it. Okay. Second, you can't assume where they'll be when they're using it, whether on the streets or at home. Typically, you could have presumed that they were at a place of business or at their home using a desktop when we were designing a website in 2001 or 2003 or something, because there wasn't all these magical devices. But now you have to presume that they can be anywhere, and maybe you can get some analytics about your industry where they might be using it, but you have to do further research. You just can't presume they're sitting home at a desktop or a laptop. And the context of their usage is probably the most important thing. Maybe they're comparison shopping at Best Buy and your Amazon.com or something, and you want to have some sort of feature or functionality that changes depending on possibly geolocation or the device that they're physically on. Maybe they're on the couch and they're using the device as a second screen. Maybe they are at a place of business, and you can design the website for the whole thing, for the whole real estate. But what you can't do is assume any of those things, and that's the most important thing. Must change inherent presumptions. You guys can leave after this because this is the most important piece. When you're designing something, and there's so many different walks of life in here, so it's hard to say something that's an umbrella term. But when you conceptualize your idea of the website, you can't really visualize it. You can't, see that poster, there's a good one. So that poster, somebody sat down and said, this poster is going to be 24 by 36 inches or something in that regard. And they're going to lay it all nice and neat because they know the fixed width. You can't do that when you're building the web. And if there's anything you can learn tonight, I'm hoping it's that. There's an idea of fluidity and of, responsiveness. That it's not the design that matters the most, it's the content. And your device must be a window to the content that you're trying to show. Okay, good. So this is difficult to do because we're still living in the desktop-centric world. Some of the stats I can pull out of my butt at the last minute is, and there's graphs and such. 30%, it's like 30% of mobile users or web users are mobile only at this point. And then there is this overlapping area where it's like 68% or something are mobile and desktop, laptop, and only like 22% or whatever are desktop only. This is, and so it's hard to think about this differently now because it's still sort of growing. This is WordPress.org. This is the theme directory where you can go download free themes. These are the most popular ones. These have been downloaded millions of times. The ones at the very top are the ones that are embedded in WordPress itself, so it's guaranteed that they've been downloaded hundreds of millions of times. And these are some of the other more popular ones. And I put a link in here too if you want to go look. If you notice, every one of these thumbnails, as they're being sold to the user, is a desktop image. This is what is shown at probably like 1200 or 1378 across or something. And only this one, I don't know if you can see that clearly, shows the desktop, the laptop, the tablet, and the phone. So it's conceptually, it's difficult to think about, and a lot of users and developers aren't there yet. Okay. Can I ask if there's any questions so far? That was the most abstract part of it. It's kind of like I wanted to set the tone for the rest of the night. We have to like unlearn what we've learned. I actually had that link somewhere. Dang it, because it was May the 4th. But just do your best to get that impression in your head. A lot of this is breaking your assumptions, breaking your presumptions about the user, about what design is, and to think responsibly. So number 2, responsive ideas. There are 3 words here that are important because they're all very similar. And I'm just going to breeze through this. Feel free to cut me off because I can get carried away. But we're going to cut. There's a lot of info here, and I'm just going to step through the definitions so you kind of know the context of what's going on. Responsive design means that it's a one-size-fits-all solution. You download one HTML document, and there are CSS styling sheets that have what are called breakpoints that will adjust the styling based on what the viewport is. Okay, is that good? I know there's a lot of novices, so I'm using like technical jargon.
A good example of the viewport is like this, what you see when you're on a boat or something on the side, like
Right,
window.
right, yes.
It may be bigger or smaller.
Right. Depending on the room in the boat, you might have a different size window,
Right.
so it'll look differently. And that idea of viewport carries to screens and to phones and whatever else. Responsive means you download one single document, and the document that has all the styling in it will adjust the view based on the screen that it knows it's in. Did you have something? Yeah.
Device width
Yes.
is a great way to
Okay.
think about it.
Yeah.
Viewport is more technical, but
Right. The device
actual
width.
physical width of the device is what is being used.
Right. And there's the media query, which we'll get to, is the actual thing that sets that. Yeah.
What we did last month, that was bootstrapping.
Right. We'll get
That was
to
one
that.
of the things we talked about, that it would adjust
Right.
itself. So
Right.
it's the same kind of idea.
It's kind of a good segue. And then there's a
So
slide in here on
responsive
Bootstrap.
means it's going to.
All right.
Yeah.
There's a difference though. So responsive, the general idea means change it based on the device. That's the general idea since 2010 or so, 2007, is don't just download the exact same site for every single person. Make it flexible enough so that something will change depending on what they're viewing. How to implement that is a different idea though. So responsive means everybody downloads the exact same thing, and it will break to a different, it will flex and change depending on what the viewport is. Adaptive means it uses this idea of progressive enhancement. So adaptive will start with something very, very small and lightweight, just the minimum amount of HTML. Maybe it starts with like a very small photo. And then it asks the device, how wide are you or what kind of device are you? And then it adapts and builds up on top of that. That's at least what Wikipedia says. I've never really understood these two until like 4 p.m. today. So adaptive is very different. It's not downloading everything at once and then breaking like responsive is. Adaptive is the bare minimum, and then it builds up compared to, so if you're on a desktop environment and you have a gigantic connection, you can download these high quality photos that you would not want to download on a mobile device out in the wild, as an example. And then mobile is your M.dot sites. So M.dot Washington Post, M.dot New York Times, where that's using a server callback. So when you ask the server to send you the web page, it says, oh, hey, mobile device just asked me for this. I'm going to send a completely separate type of site that is built specifically for mobile devices. And there's a lot of holy wars right now as to which is the best. Best, if you're wondering, is responsive. This is a solid idea and has a lot of merits, but it also has a lot of problems too. We don't have time to go into, but I just want to reference it because you might have seen that around. You can ask questions later on if you have any more. So fluid versus fixed layouts is really important. It's the Bootstrap grid is the idea, if you play with that, or if we'll toy with some stuff, and so you can see. Fixed just means no matter the window size, the view size, it will always be the same. Specifically, if you were to drag in the right side, the content on the right would just be off. There would be a scroll bar. It would be fixed. It wouldn't change. Fluid means the stuff on the right would either shrink because it's based on a percent, or it would snap below it because it's built to, like, the idea is like a tub of water with like rubber duckies or something in it. It's like fluid and everything's moving around to the shape of the container. So that's fluid versus fixed, and fluid is a piece of responsive design. Graceful degradation and progressive enhancement are the opposites. Progressive enhancement, like we said, is you start with the very lowest and you, is that right? Yeah, and you add stuff. Oh, they're not opposites exactly, but they're kind of related. Progressive enhancement is you start with the lowest and you add stuff to it as your device is capable. And graceful degradation is, in this capacity, if graceful, okay, so this is like a whole course by itself. Graceful degradation is the idea is you don't want to add a lot of features and a lot of snazzy, cool JavaScript stuff or high quality images or CSS that won't work on old browsers or on devices that don't support it. You don't want touch events, for example, on your phone. You don't want to make assumptions of the device, and that's what graceful degradation is. So you want to, any feature that you add, you want it to be able to gracefully degrade to a lesser quality that I would say is the higher quality. So less is more in this context. And this is, I'm sorry, that was a really chopped up definition. Is that, we'll move on, okay. All right. And then mobile first design is the last major definition where that talks about like the WordPress.org idea and the whole idea of a designer or developer will sit down at their massive iMac or 5K machine and they'll see all this real estate and they'll want to design to fill up the whole space, forgetting that users might be on something completely different. And so there's this whole movement now of actually starting at the lowest segment first, which is usually 320 pixels wide, and then building up the content from there. And it completely changes your way of thinking about websites because all of a sudden it's one big long list of stuff that flexes out instead of a big box of stuff that you have to kind of squeeze into a column when it gets smaller. This is a really good best practice because I'm sort of like a purist in the sense that like we don't want the extra fluff that all these other major websites. If you guys have used like a theme that you've bought before, they pack in all this like juicy like cool tricks and stuff, and there's like these crazy 3D viewers and like all this. Yeah, all this crap is moving across the screen and stuff. You don't want all that. You want the simplest, straightforward, and then build up on top of that. So mobile first design, if you look that up, there'll be a lot of blog posts about that. Any questions about that? That was a rapid move through. Good, awesome. Okay, so Mobilegeddon was just a few weeks ago. Tuesday, 4th. So 2 weeks ago, Google does this thing. They're king, so they just mess with people because they're bored or whatever. They have this internal algorithm that handles what's called the search engine optimization, or that's what people on the outside call it. Businesses are vying, trying to get to the top of Google for keyword searches, like Panda Farm, Charlottesville. I don't know, maybe there's a Panda Farm. And all the Panda Farms in the area.
Thank you. Yeah. Is that your new business?
Yeah, it is. Right. Let's say hair salons instead are vying, they bought keywords, they bought advertising space, they're trying to get to the top of hair salon Charlottesville because their business will be much better. It's better to be first than it is to be 10th or even on a second page or something. So the SEO is what that's called, as you're probably familiar. Has had implications in the past. There's like Penguin and Peregrine and Polygraph, I don't know. Google releases a new algorithm every 3 months or so, or 3 to 6, that just changes the SEO. If you were king or queen at the top before, you're suddenly not. You're suddenly 5th or 6th because they don't like you and you need to change your content and work your way back up. It's much like a credit score. Really easy to go down, really hard to build back up. So SEO is just, it's a nightmare of an industry and just really hard to, you don't sleep a lot. Okay, so the Mobilegeddon, then, as people were calling it, Google announced on April 21st, they were going to release a new algorithm that was mobile-centric, which is sort of the first time that they did this. So if your site wasn't responsive, or if it didn't have the right queries, the media queries, and if it didn't look good on a mobile phone, you were going to get docked points in your SEO score. So it could affect you.
What are we, kids?
And this affected a lot of people. Some people worse than others. It's kind of like Y2K. If you're doing best practices ahead of time, Y2K in the last millennium, there was like, okay, we'll talk about it later. Most people weren't affected, but it could severely affect you if you didn't have it ready to go. Okay, well, we'll get in. Questions? Good?
Almost all WordPress sites are mobile friendly at this point.
Yeah, I guess you could safely say that. Yeah, like if you've been updating and stuff, and most, I'd say like 51% plus, you know, like I couldn't give you a real number. Yeah, I'd say there's certainly been a huge push and a lot of efforts, and certainly a lot of small businesses that are running here that work with clients have probably seen a push these last few years to get responsive ready in general, kind of like the Y2K thing. But there's certainly a lot that aren't out there. It's kind of similar to HTTPS, if you guys are familiar with that. It's the secure protocol instead of just wide open HTTP. And Google is also ranking that now too. So they're kind of using their weight to push for a better web for everybody. So there's a lot out there still that aren't, and this will make sure that they either die away or they step in the line. Power is interesting. Okay, so helpful tools. I have 3 that to check out, kind of 2.5. Chrome DevTools, you guys are familiar with that. I'll just breeze through that real quick because it's a really interesting tool and it's a lot of information. I'll just show you some screenshots of how it works. And heck, maybe we can do a whole class on Chrome DevTools and how to use it to make it work. Google has a thing called Google Webmaster, which you absolutely should be using because it will give you rankings about the speed of your site. It'll give you influence on like how your HTML is constructed and how you should change your content and a bunch of other things. That's Google Webmasters, and they released a new tool called Mobile Checker, which does a scan of your site and just gives you a yay or nay if it's good or bad. If like you'll be penalized in your SEO. And I think I have a screenshot of that in the next few slides too. There's the SitePoint article that I found that just 12 essential responsive design tools. If you're familiar with wireframing and like sketching and design aspects and stuff, there's a bunch of cool tools online that will help you do that. And I was just going to open up real quick. If anybody else can call out really quickly, yeah.
But yeah, responsive design view is the only thing I've ever used.
Okay. What is it?
In the web browser, if you press Control-Shift-N,
yeah,
you could demonstrate right now.
Actually, I think I have it up in the next slide. Yeah.
So then it'll
like this.
Something like that.
So this is Chrome DevTools then.
Yeah, I think it's a little different in Firefox.
Okay.
Something similar where it just shows you what the website looks like in that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So this is like your bread and butter. This is what you should be doing. This is a website I designed, and then this is like my actual, as far as like professionals are concerned. If you want to consider me a professional, this is like what you're actually doing. If I have more time after I'll talk, I can actually walk you through and show you how this works. But you open up what's called the DevTools system, and it has all these tabs, really powerful tools about. It shows you the whole HTML. It shows you this is the JavaScript console open right now, so you can run scripts inside. And who's not familiar with DevTools? Who's never used it before or heard of it before? That's okay if you haven't. So it's this really great thing. This is well worth its weight in gold. I would advocate, heck, I would almost advocate learning how to build websites with this because this gives you an intimate idea of what the browser's thinking when it's trying to build the website. It's really, really powerful, and it's getting more powerful every week. They keep just adding a ton of stuff. You can down to like frame rates and stuff. That's rendering your website. It can show you like the timing of your JavaScript sites, and you can do like breakpoints and all this crazy stuff anyways. So this is the standard Chrome DevTools view, and I have it open in one large Google Chrome frame, and then it's split here. And if I drag this back and forth, I can adjust the width of my sites. So that's kind of mobile-ish. This is obviously clearer when I'm actually doing it, not talking about a screenshot. But if I open up a second view in it, which is clicking on this little phone icon at the very top, it is the exact same thing, except it jumps to this. It actually renders as best as it can the phone view. And then there's a drop-down that says Apple iPhone 5. With the dimensions, you can do portrait or landscape. You can even throttle the network, so you can see how poorly it will load on like if you're running a baud modem or something. And then it scrolls and operates just like a normal device, and it actually triggers touch events too, not click events, which is kind of neat. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's for a whole nother class. But this wasn't here as of like a few months ago. This is like getting better and better, more sophisticated stuff. Anyways, so you can just go to your website and open this up and see what it looks like. It's a free tool and it's extremely powerful. And it has, in that drop down, there's got to be like 100, 200 devices, something like that. I just made that number up. I know it's a really long list.
Go ahead and show them some of them.
I can't, it's a photo.
Oh.
I can open it up after that. Yeah, so this is the mobile checker from Webmaster Tools. So you just put in your website and it does this little progress bar thing and then it tells you, and the link is right there. Okay, yeah, so questions on the tools, what I had so far? The dev tools thing probably will have a lot of questions. When I finish this up, I'll walk through and I can answer any questions about that. Does that sound good? Media queries. So who doesn't know what a media query is? Just off, it's totally okay if you don't. Okay, cool. So media queries is just a code. It's a special piece of CSS that goes in your CSS file. And what it does is it separates, it's just a code that says media query, and then it says up until this width, or starting at this width and up until, or for this specific resolution, it only triggers at that point. So if you wanted your background or your text to be red for whatever reason on iPhones only, you could say for screen widths under 366, I don't know what it is. And that will only show on phones is that red color. It just triggers under those specific conditions. And then, yeah, so media queries, we catch at certain widths, only applies at that point. Yeah. Oh, is this gonna work? Dang it. So I thought of like a coin. Oh, it's the PDF, that's why. Dang it. It was a GIF. So you guys have seen these manual coin separators before. It rolls down the rack and it will separate. This one is based on weights. It's like the quarters get flung and the nickels and pennies and dimes. I had one as a kid that went by size. So like the bigger ones drop last because the big hole's at the last, and then it's, yeah, okay. You know what I'm talking about if you haven't seen them before. That's exactly how media queries work. It goes through and only catches when it's supposed to. Best GIF of all time. Okay, so this is the exact codes of what you would use. Media means media query, and this goes right in. I mean, this is a CSS sheet by itself. It doesn't do anything, but this is completely legal code. And what this says is for screens only, and you can choose between. I know of print and screen. Those are two big ones. There might be something else. Anybody? Print and screen. So if you want to do, for some clients, I've done like a print-only view that gets rid of all the other garbage on the screen that a person doesn't want to print. You could have a media-only print, and it says hide, display none for all the elements that I don't want. And that only triggers when they're hitting the print button, which is pretty neat. But this one is only on the screen, and when the maximum device width, everything up until 480 pixels, which is, I believe, the old standard width of the iPhone or something. There are standards that are well documented out there, and you can set breakpoints at any point, any pixel point that you want, but there are like best practices, and there's typically like 4 to 6 breakpoints that you want to gradually step up into. So if you want, for example, text that would be relatively smallish on a bigger screen because they're reading a lot of it, would be larger on a phone, you would set that here. So for smaller devices, it's bigger because it's closer to your face or whatever. I'm sure there's scientific reason. All right, and then, so that would catch only for phones and wouldn't apply to bigger ones. And then this is the exact same thing, but the max device width is 1200 pixels. So anything above 1200, it wouldn't apply. So if you got a massively wide screen, and this is typically one of the largest breakpoints, it would stop there. Now you can do minimum device width too. You can combine them together to create a low and an upper bound. There's other queries that you can add, including portrait and landscape mode. You can do a resolution, like pixel density. So if it's like a retina type display, or the DPI set to, not DPI, but there's like a code for it, it's like set to 2. So you can make it download higher quality images that are double the size, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense? I think this is the best working example we could get without actually walking through it. So yeah, Bootstrap came up before, and we did Bootstrap last month.
This is not the best example as an image, but we can walk through it at the end. But essentially, this is taken exactly from the Bootstrap website. If you go to getbootstrap.com/CSS, you'll see exactly this. And this is showing you 3 media queries, which are some of the standard sizes. They're using this thing called less, which is it's like CSS, but you can do variables and some other things. It's called a preprocessor. So their 3 sizes are at 768, that's the minimum width for the small screens, do that. At 992, I don't know why it's 992, but that's like the medium tablet size, or phablets, like the phone tablets. That's the minimum width there. And then for everything else larger than that, that's at 1200. And then they have some windows between where they create like an upper and lower bound in there too. This is it doesn't show you explicitly, but it's just kind of a quick glance at the website. Yeah, okay. So last bit is responsive themes. Yeah.
So when you put in the maps, so what the second line is the name of the maps.
Yeah.
Then the device reads the name of the maps. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it won't trip. It won't do this CSS for things lower than that or higher, only in that special window. And that's typically what they, for whatever reason, like a bigger phone or a smaller tablet might fit in this awkward range where text might need some extra line height or padding or something, as an example. And then you would want to fit only those conditions. Otherwise, if you just have the max, everything below it will take hold, and sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you want to cut off like the lower end. It's like a best practice sort of thing.
Is the network here or something so slow you couldn't?
I have a 2-minute deadline.
Oh, I get it.
Placed arbitrarily on myself. But yeah, we'll move the window around and we'll take a look at it. Yeah, so framework versus theme, this is for when you're actually choosing one. We'll jump right to the end because they go together. So many key term solutions exist. I think we had Adam Heckler come talk about Jetpack in January, and Jetpack has a responsive plugin attachment thing that you can make your site responsive V, because it just, yeah, well, it's not like a full solution, it's another add-on. Jetpack's really good at that, of adding more stuff to it, and it mostly works for most sites, but not always all the time, and it's not very clean. So that's what I mean by key term solutions. That's like a band name or something, like a new digital agency, key term solutions. All right, for turnkey solutions, you can like buy a responsive theme and just apply it to your site, but it might break a lot of stuff because you need to integrate your plugins and your contents. Maybe your images aren't cut at the right size, and that could make something ugly or whatever. So just kind of beware of that, and that's like the most important takeaway for this, how to choose something. There are a lot of responsive frameworks out there. There are CSS-only frameworks, a ton of them. Bootstrap is by far the most popular, but that means you have to build the whole theme yourself, which is what we talked about last time. And then there are responsive themes, and I just placed a lot of links here for choosing. People have blogged about this extensively, for choosing a responsive theme, the type of thing to look for. Particularly, 2 things I can think of off the top of my head is the breakpoints, kind of looking into that and seeing where your content will break, and the image sizes that they make, because WordPress will cut a special image size, and themes can say, make this image size a certain width or whatever. So look at what the themes do for those types of things. And the second thing is the menu. The menu, you're probably familiar with this new thing called the hamburger icon. It's just 3 black lines, and it's like, it's in all our mobile apps all of a sudden, and it just means flyout menu. So you click that, and it goes to a menu somewhere. Implementation of that is way all over the place. A lot of themes that you buy that are premium themes will be like a JavaScript implementation where it's really heavy, and it's like it has this animation that grows out, and then it can just be sort of clunky and slow, particularly like on a mobile device. My favorite implementation, if I can evangelize this, is I don't like hiding content. It's just something that like I adhere to. So in my sites, as best as I can, the footer always has a full menu or full sitemap, as much as that's important. And if there's a hamburger menu, it will click and it just has the anchor jump to that footer section that shows what was already displayed. So it doesn't open anything with JavaScript or anything. It just uses the inherent HTML
properties to jump to that. I like that because it's lightweight and cleaner, but some people might not. And then there's usually a back to top link that jump back. So, yeah, I think Smashing Magazine actually does that really well. Bigger concerns, responsive design relationship between your content and your users. Yeah, so the most important takeaway is you kind of, if you want to do this well, you have to get a bit abstract and you have to think about your content as little individual nodes or little individual cards, things stored in a database somewhere that will then be displayed on some sort of screen. And in between there's a stack of stuff that will make it flow and work together. And we call that responsive design or whatever you want to call it. But you just simply can't think of it as a static site that will always be 1300 by 700 pixels. So you have to think of it as a relationship between what your users want and the content that you have. This goes way deeper too into this whole new industry, Internet of Things. There's a really great piece about the Apple Watch and how there's no browser on it and how nobody cared because a lot of things aren't being used, a lot of content isn't being viewed through an HTML browser anymore. We've had a decade, 2 decades now, of baking an HTML file, downloading it, rendering it, and reading it. And that's the standard across all the devices. Now we're using these third-party services and APIs and applications and apps talking to each other back and forth. So, and WordPress is working really hard on this too. It's now using, this next few years, these classes are gonna start talking about JSON and how to grab content from one service and put it to another. And it's not gonna be rendering HTML solely anymore. It's gonna be talking to devices and doing all these weird things. And that establishes the relationship between content and users. I hope that didn't get like way over people's heads, but as like somebody who's like really into development, this is that's really cool because it's really interesting. Yeah.
So I developed 5 different websites because my users were different for each website. The kind of people I want to draw for each website.
Yeah.
So what you're saying now is that you can create one website and draw in those different kinds of users and different contents by using JSON?
Well, kind of, no. This is sort of like a crazy developer who hasn't eaten dinner is talking about the abstract ideas of the future. This is just trying to break down thinking that we only view content in HTML pages, right, which are rendered, sent by a server and rendered on a browser. Right. And that's deteriorating. I'm not sure about your 5-site example. That would be like closer to responsive design, where it's like it can render differently. Right. That's still an HTML site. This is getting more into there's no HTML, there's no browser anymore. Maybe it's a special application on your phone or your television, or maybe you have an audio device that will read parsed out RSS feeds or something, who knows. But it's this new Internet of Things that's taking hold, and it will be changing things dynamically. So just understand that HTML is the way that we do things. We read HTML documents now because that's the way browsers have been built, but that is a very good way of reading things and will be for the future. That will just be a segment going forward, maybe 70%, but I get it. You don't like it? You can that was so close. Last bullet point. Doing things the right way prevents future problems down the road, and that's the idea of future-proofing and yeah, and trying to cut off problems before they happen. Cool. All right, I'm going to count this as a win before she walked out. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. So that was, I always feel bad doing these conversations because this is my whole life, or these presentations. And I know that this is like a decision tree, right? I'm just glazing across the top, and every word I say can go deep into this like abstract philosophy of like, this is what this word means, and this is what these other people are doing. Technically, it can be really complex. So I feel bad because I feel like I've opened Pandora's box, and if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them now. Yeah.
Could you try and open up your bioenergy site?
Yeah.
In the Firefox, or actually go with Chrome, it's a little easier. And if you would just live demonstrate what you had gone through, that'd be great.
Ugh. Control-J. Nope. Control-J. No. I only know OS 10.
Control-Shift-J.
Control-Shift-J? Yes, that probably makes sense. There we go. Okay. So that opens up the console, and then I can drag this back and forth.
Control-Shift-J.
So I was working with a developer. The cool thing about this is you don't need a second window open. You can do full screen, and then you get both of them together. That's just a personal bit. So if we go here, you'll see jumps, you'll see breakpoints, and I think you can kind of see it with the logo here. So you'll see the pixels across the top, 959 across, 975, 998. Is there one? No, I don't think I can go that wide. Okay. So if I go down here, this is like last fall, I forget where it's at, 890. So I said so center it for tablets and middle-sized devices. So at 890, the whole thing shifts. But the rest of the menu stays up. And that's different than like the text, right? Or because the text will bump. Actually, there is a breakpoint there. You see that one? That's at 1024. Yep, 1024 is a standard. I think that's iPad portrait width size. So that just creates a little bit of a margin. And there's more down below too. And then at this one, 768, I believe. Yeah, 1024 is 1024 by 768 is a really strong, historically strong viewport size. A lot of, like, through the Windows XP era, a lot of screen sizes are like 1024 by 768. And the iPad is currently set to that too. I think both the Max and the small one, right, the mini, because they've just downsized. Sorry, I'm thinking way faster than I can talk right now. So I use 1024 and 768. One is the iPad width, and one is the iPad height, or portrait and landscape. Somebody can interrupt it from that. Foaming at the mouth up here. Okay, so that's 768 is when the whole menu pops. And here we got this hamburger. And this one I was building, I forgot what I did. Yep, foot and mouth. Okay, so this uses a JavaScript flyout thing that handles the menu. A lot of this I was working with a designer that wanted that too, so I just implemented what he wanted. And then it basically just shrinks. There's a few more breakpoints to handle the margin there, but it basically just shrinks for all phones.
Did you consider scaling your logo where you have the banner?
Yeah.
At the top, or was that?
Well, this is all design cues from the designer. I just implemented it. So he told me explicitly what he wanted, and I'm not sure exactly like why he thought that way or whatever. I personally did as opposed, like, because this is a big jump, right, from the way it looked before. One of the first steps we had, the menu didn't hamburger like that. Hamburger's not a verb. And it just appeared underneath the logo. It is now, which is standard practice sometimes. But he then decided to put it up into that. What's cool is there's a video down here that does the same thing. I found this sweet spot. If you use, for the developers in the room, if you use height auto in a relatively positioned container, you can use the padding bottom of that same item for the embedded one, and it will do a proportion of that container.
That video will just like make it really small. Let's see it.
Yeah, so this one shrinks to, I think, 57% is the 16:9 ratio. So 16:9 is video. And if if that wasn't set to that, this would have black boxes, right, on the tops or the sides. Right. So to get that 16:9 ratio, instead of setting the pixel dimension at every freaking width, you can just set the ratio, and then it's this smooth gliding motion.
Can you send that out? Because that's a nice piece of, like,
yeah. Padding bottom for height auto is like one of my favorite tricks. Yeah.
The group on that. Can I ask a couple more questions?
Absolutely, yeah.
So can you describe the difference between the fluid part here versus the fixed and what it's doing?
Yep.
So everyone got that?
So fluid is a couple things. One is the width here is a percentage. If you see that the text will wrap, because it's not set to like 600 pixels. Pixels versus percent, or pixels versus ems, is typically the relationship between fixed and fluid. So the text inside will wrap because the container it's in will get smaller because it's set to a percentage of the size, of the width. And that's what fluid means, is that things will shrink and change depending on the size of the container. If it didn't, it would just jut out and you would be invisible. You have to scroll sideways to see it because the fixed width would be bigger than that. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. I have a second example real quick if you're interested that is more maybe tangible. These are part of the same, so this and down here is a container that has the video and the text. Right now, these are stacks because at that breakpoint, I said snap below it at 100% width of the container, but at like somewhere up here, there we go, it goes side by side. So now each of these were 100%, so they were stacked, and now this is like 2/5, I think, like 40/60 or something like that. And what's cool is that this still sticks, the 16:9 thing, except this is at 39% because it's like wonky how it does the ratio's built. I'm not sure. It's like, it's not 57 anymore. It had to be like a division of this and that or something like that. But that's a good example of the fluid, how it snaps underneath.
So you
That's
basically just set the ratio.
Right, it expands, yeah. So I don't have to worry about the graduations in between. I can just set it the percent and it will grow based on the width of that, which is nice. Yeah.
So during your talk, you mentioned mobile first.
Yeah.
And starting small and kind of, so I have a few questions.
Yeah.
Dealing with the designer because
Yeah.
as a coder, I have fallen into the I don't know what I call it, the sin, but just my sites can just look like a code developer.
Yeah.
Right? And because I'm not a design person, and so I'm not so good at working and I can make it work, but make it look good, that's a whole, I mean, that's so important.
Yeah.
And so my first question is about how the difference, did you develop this with mobile first design?
Mhm.
Like saying, okay, I'm gonna start from the smallest thing versus starting with what I standard, like a standard size. And the
Right.
second one is, how did you deal with when you have a designer who says, I want to do this, and you're like, to do that, that's going to take so much. Can we do it this way? Tell me about some of the interaction that you have with the designer, so you can tell us how do you interact with designers when you either disagree with them,
Right.
or you try to present a better way that will cut the time in half.
Right. Well, I haven't had a bad experience in a while with as far as this is concerned. I've only done a handful of projects. One of them, this SciTent one, working with Tim Johnson, took up most of my time for the last 6 months. And then this other guy, Jason, that I work with out of DC, designed this one. Typically, what it comes down to, and when people say it's a WordPress site, what they mean is this: header, navigation, giant banner, hero element it's called, and then typically like 4 boxes underneath. And every theme on every premium site or every free theme offers that now. Everybody kind of see that before, and you can recognize the sites that you've seen. Now this is hierarchy of information. This is really good. And in my opinion, honestly, most sites should be leveraging this heavily because you want pretty much the same thing for the flow of information. Maybe spice it up a little bit. But this came about specifically because of the breaking down aspect. It's not mobile first exactly. I would still say it's like designed like this, but every element is designed to flow. This answered the responsive call, essentially, and which is why all the sites starting to merge and look as one. Because this, well, we can do it. Now their menu is out of, right? They didn't do enough breakpoints in there. And I didn't actually design this one. This is just the company I was working with, but they just rolled this out. And most of it's really slick. So their navigation is JavaScript. They could use a few more breakpoints. But so like the hero, the giant flashy middle part just shrinks, right? Yeah, they're using an off-the-shelf theme. You can tell because it uses, this is really hard. This right here is really hard to render the in-betweens. And so premium themes will do a JavaScript implementation, which is fine, but it gets, JavaScript was a nightmare like 6 or 8 years ago for cross-browser standards and stuff, but now it's fine that it will quickly render the differences between, but it's not the best. I would typically like a lighter weight thing, and I wouldn't necessarily design
So by the
like
time
that.
gets to the mobile level, it's
Well, they, yeah, it is. It might be.
Can you use the tools and show it what it looks like on an iPhone?
It might be, the media query might be.
It may be doing device testing or checking.
Yeah, but my experience with these is that they're better than this. They'll pop, like
Can you choose
it'll
the
flow.
model at the top?
Huh?
Select model?
6 Plus. You'll get yelled at when you switch devices. It'll say you have to reload to get the full experience, or whatever. But yeah, it's not triggering still. If somebody has a phone and want to try SciTents.com, they might show it. They might have just not implemented this too. This is actually a good example of sort of, well, poorly done fluid, but sort of fixed width too, where it's like it doesn't, this is how fixed sites looked like on mobile phones until people started making responsive stuff. It didn't change. It was just the whole site condensed down. But you can see the rest is pretty well done. Like the things that were completely wide now stack. The boxes are stacked one by one. Yeah. So this is the answer to your question. This is as long as it degrades to mobile, that it can stack to a vertical line. That's what you're looking for. And any design has to have an out that does this.
You didn't have any issues with the designers that said it was too bad?
Well, I mean, okay, so like the last 12 months, I did a bunch of off-the-shelf CSS changes for premium themes that took it into consideration already. And the woman I was working with designed that with in mind, but it was just a lot of like copy-paste stuff. She used the same theme for a lot of stuff. Jason, I started working with, I was able to start building themes from scratch. This is, I did like 2 or 3 other sites for him, but this is like the best example of like all of it put together, because it has this giant wide open like main screen that condenses with everything else. Yeah, so I mean, obviously show them the research, walk away if you have to. I would advocate and argue for this scroll line thing. The fold, above the fold is a really contentious issue nowadays. Above the fold is a heavily influenced from the print world, which it literally means in a folded newspaper, everything on the stack of newspapers will be above the fold. That's the most important content because that's what will be visibly shown on a stack of newspapers. And the idea kind of translates to the web because this is above the fold and then there's a fold below it where you can't see it on the initial load. Except when you're printing newspapers, you know exactly where the fold's going to be. And on phones and devices and everything else, you don't. So it's hard to advocate that for one. And second, there's no scroll operation. There's no scroll behavior in a magazine or a newspaper. People see what they see on top and then they have to go find stuff. On here, where the usage patterns and the research behind it, there's a lot of people understand the scroll. And then so they'll, you don't have to worry about the above the fold so much. You can put stuff in the hierarchy below. Yeah, I'm burning out. What do you got?
I tried one of those designs for the box design where it spreads across.
Yes, yeah.
And what happened was it was fine on the mobile phone,
Mm-hmm.
but when I looked at it on the screen, the content, if it was not equal
Right.
in all the boxes, was all over the place in every few spaces.
Okay.
And yet it seemed to be, the script seemed to say that it was adaptable, but
Mhm.
it really didn't, because it didn't account for the content within the box.
I can
The
think of,
length the
yeah,
content
right.
in the
I can think of like 3 things for this real quick. One, vertical alignment is like awful. it will never happen. There's ways to get around it and stuff because it's just the way they wrote the CSS spec. You can't vertically align stuff. 2 is when you're buying a theme, and this is the content user relationship I was talking about, you typically want to fill the boxes that are there. So you start designing your site and writing your content for, well, I have to fill these 4 boxes. What 4 things do I want to say? And that can be treacherous because you'll torture yourself. Maybe you only have 3 things, or maybe it's 5 things, or maybe you don't want those boxes all together. But if you start with a theme, it can be really difficult because to get out of that mindset. So just kind of remember that. That might be easier to just, I don't need any of them. And then I had a 3rd point. I forgot what it was. I think it was, that's where breakpoints come in. And you'll either have to like pare down your content or change the font size so that they line up better. But yeah.
What I did was just try and create content in each box equal.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Like I'm actually going through that. I'm designing my own personal site, my Patchworks site, and I have the same problem. I decided early on I was going to do 2 columns, and all the word count has to line up because it's like getting a haircut. I keep evening it out, but it doesn't work. Was plenty more to show. If you guys want to, should we just keep going or? Yeah. Bootstrap. You want to see Bootstrap real quick? Good. Okay. So Bootstrap, for the uninitiated, is a CSS framework. In software design, there's the idea of opinions. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes people get really angry about them. But opinionated design or opinionated like development means we're going to do it this way because of these reasons. There are pros and cons, but this is the way we're going to do it. the Linux kernel, and it's usually advocated by really opinionated people. The Ruby on Rails is another one, the guy who created it. Like, it's a very opinionated way of doing it. It has a lot of strengths and it has some drawbacks too, but the strengths are what make it really, really awesome. So Bootstrap is kind of similar. You can't please all people with all things, so you choose one way to do it and you do it exceptionally well. And what Bootstrap is I actually do please a lot of people. Bootstrap is the grid, and that wasn't emphasized enough, I don't think, last time. But the grid. What are we talking about? The grid. There we go. So I'll just off the top of my head, there's so many things that I could say. People liked designing tables. That's where I was going to start with. Grids are nice because they offer, like the poster, a visual design cue of spacing, and this goes here and separated by this many columns and that sort of thing. It's when you get to the rows part, which is what you were talking about, it's the tricky part because the content wants to flow and it's not static. It doesn't hold in spot. So Bootstrap's grid system is really great because it's a CSS framework with a packaged bunch of HTML classes, essentially. So you're building out, you call the right classes at the right time, and you build columns across. Sometimes you want to build 3 columns. This is using like probably a 10 and 2 or a 9 and 3 or something. So there's 12 total columns going across, and then you add up the columns for the amount of space that you want to do. So if you want to do half and half, you do a 6 width column and a 6 width column. And you just have to call special classes that Bootstrap has, which is right here. So you put everything in a row, and then a 4 space column will create a third of the page sort of thing. And what you automatically get with that is in here it talks about fixed width and fluid width. You get the collapsing. So it's depending on the classes that you use, they will be lined up. The columns will be, and sometimes in other scenarios they'll be stacked. And so Bootstrap is this really powerful thing that's super well documented and has all these extensions and plugins and stuff that you can put in that will do all this for you. Now, this isn't a WordPress theme, as you emphasized last time, but you could build an HTML site with this. In fact, a ton of people do. You see a lot of websites for like startups and stuff that just throw up a Bootstrap tweaked site, and there's kind of like a smell. When you go to a Bootstrap site, you kind of know that they use Bootstrap because a lot of the elements look very, very similar. Bootstrap also, real quick, I'll just add, because we didn't get there last time, offers these really great JavaScript components. Until like 2008, 2009, JavaScript was kind of like a wild territory. There was this thing called MooTools and a handful of other libraries that were like vying to be the coolest new thing. jQuery ultimately won out. But then there's all these sub-libraries that did standard things like tooltips or swipes or little boxes that come up. So the Bootstrap JavaScript stuff is really neat. Let's just go to modal, for example, because it's a really standardized way. So it's a really clean and standardized way to do standard implementations of stuff. And you can, let's do tabs, for example. This is a JavaScript implementation, drop downs and other stuff. So we didn't get there last time, but that's that. And it's all mobile integrated too. So somebody's talking too much. A lot of hot air. Yes.
Things go in and out.
Right.
What you're now talking about is
right.
So anything that's stationary.
No, it's actually really frustrating that somebody who makes money with this. Right. Right. Right.
Well, if you're making money, you don't want it. You want it to change every 4 years. But HTML's been around for a long time.
Yeah, it's there's this no. When automated cars come around, most cars will turn to automated cars over the period of decades. I don't know if you guys are familiar with automated cars, but they're like computer operated. They take sensors and they just drive themselves. They're a superior technology, obviously. They're still a car, but they're not driven by a person. Person-driven cars will still exist, and there will be this in-between time
and there will still be cars. There will be automated cars and people-driven cars and driving on some roads, or maybe they won't. You can argue about this. But it's still the same thing. It's just that, so what I'm trying to say is HTML isn't going away. HTML is a bedrock that will always be there. That's the person-driven car. But there will be additional ways. Up until this point, we've only had HTML. We've had other things too, but for viewing content specifically, for most cases, we've only had HTML. And going into the future, really pretty rapidly in the next 5 years, you may find yourself, not guaranteed, but you may find yourself in a position of serving content in a way that isn't HTML. So you have to kind of not think of WordPress or a website as a service that provides HTML pages, but that could possibly provide HTML and something else, JSON, or who knows what hasn't been invented yet. But all it gets to is this abstract idea of you have a database storing words, images, content of some sort, and a viewer viewing it on some sort of device. And what happens in between there isn't HTML all the time. But for most cases, it will be. And this is, again, is like a cutting edge thing that don't lose sleep over this right now. I'm faithfully putting my whole career on the line by learning a lot of HTML. So it's going to stay. It's going to be okay. It will grow and change a little bit. Like we have HTML5 now and stuff, but it won't change that drastically. There are some other examples, like JavaScript is a really interesting one, because JavaScript mutates all the freaking time. And it's not JavaScript itself that changes. JavaScript itself is pretty straightforward. But if you're in my position, or you want to learn software engineering, right? Everybody and their grandmother is releasing a new JavaScript library these days that does a cool thing. It's something.js. Actually, if you look up something.js, I bet that's taken. And there's major competition between the three major ones, which is Ember and Angular and Node. Yeah. And then there's Backbone and all these others that try to do similar things that are really complicated implementations. But we don't know. And in 3 or 4 years, most of these will be gone. They'll be non-matured. They'll lose interest, and a winner will emerge. And that's what happened with jQuery in 2008, 2010. Is there was a handful of really great JavaScript libraries that did what jQuery was trying to do. MoveTools was one. There was another.
Right.
Yeah. And jQuery, those still exist, but jQuery became the established standard. And so yeah, that's part of your complaint, which I totally understand, is that things change rapidly and it's hard to know which one. I haven't committed myself to a JavaScript library yet, or really dived into one, because I don't want to relearn something else.
I've also learned that doing WordPress all these years as well.
Right.
But at least, doing good content, you pretty much have a standard.
Right, it's built on a lot of stuff. It's this peripheral stuff, like which security plugin will you use? Because one's really great right now, but 6 months, will they get bored? Just change industries suddenly? Right, yeah, and yeah, because themes clash all the time. And so yeah, that is a source of frustration, and I'm sorry on behalf of the entire web community.
That's sort of inevitable, right? It's always a development.
Right, and it's right.
People, and they don't bother to scroll. This work with.
Right.
Or you'll upload plugins, and you want, let's say, in the left-hand column, you want the social networking, so that you put like Facebook and Twitter and all that, and all of a sudden the whole content of your page goes all the way down, and all you see is the left-hand column of Facebook.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've
seen everything.
The winners, in my experience, always do best practices, and best practices haven't changed since 1998. You want quick content, fast, the quality content, and that's it. And we add all this superfluous JavaScript and high quality CSS and all these other features and stuff. Flash, you remember Flash? But at the end of the day, everybody wants high quality content at a low speed price. And if you just follow along with the libraries and stuff that are doing it the best, this is why WordPress won too, because WordPress, we might not have been sitting here if 5 years ago I went a different direction. Because movable type, I think, was the other major one. And of course, there's always Django and Rails and all these things that are competitors. Huh? Yeah, and Wix and all these other major third-party services. But WordPress won because they kept its ear to sort of ground principles of good web publishing and executed on that. So
That's, as a professional, that's the best I can do too, is like just align myself with the right people and hope that they don't mess up.
There's also a really decent website that curates plugins called Tidy Repo.
Okay. Let's look at it.
There's a lot of
Tidy
ones.
Repo?
Yeah, we did one.
Repo? Like request for?
Tidy Repo.
Oh, nice. Okay. See, can you see the responsiveness right away? They have a hierarchy of information, but this is going to stack once you go down. So you can kind of get an eye for this as you go out in the wild.
They check plugins for performance, they check it for functionality.
Nice.
Very good reviews. And they break it down by categories, so you can see the best security, what they consider to be the best security plugin.
Awesome.
Is this a internet agent?
Yeah. And I'll go here every week or so and see what's new.
Thank you.
Do you know who it's run by? Is there an about?
I forget the guy's name, but now it's open source, so it's a collection.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Of people. It was a single guy that started it.
Oh, terms. Cool.
Well, thank you, Casey.
Yeah. This went much better than I thought it was going to. Thank you for being such a captive audience. I think that's all the stuff we had. So, thank you guys very, very much.